Today's guest is Matthew Tukaki, the former CEO of the Maori Council and an advocate and so many other things. So welcome to the program, Matthew. And I'm here with Paul as well.
Kia ora.
Great to be with you, Blake and Paul. Kia ora.
Thank you for joining us this evening, Matthew.
Oh, great to be with you, mate. Really great.
So can I start by asking you, what are your initial worries for this budget as a person that is now a part of the, I guess, disability community, if you don't mind me saying that?
No, I don't mind you saying that at all. I mean, look, here's my belief. I don't think there'll be anything really substantial or new in this budget for whānau with a disability. There might be addressing some of the issues that Whakaha, the Ministry for Disabled Peoples, has in terms of budget shortfalls, but I think that was a Johnny-come-lately, given the former minister now, was basically all over the shop with it, and this government may be wanting just to clear the deck with it as an issue. So I don't think they necessarily see whānau with a disability, definitely not as a priority, and that's quite sad. And I also think, just on that front, sorry, I can't help myself, I think the way the former minister came at this and the government continue to come at this is pretty sad, such as trying to suggest that whānau with a disability and those who care and support them are somehow grifters, and that everyone's getting an iPad or everyone's getting this. I mean, I know this sounds awful, but this is the sort of behaviour and the sort of narrative that Māori in particular have to deal with more generally, and other communities as well. So, yeah, I'm not that hopeful. And if there is a little bit of money in there, to be frank, it'll be inadequate and just not enough.
And I guess my follow-up to that is, now that you're on this side of the fence as a part of the community, do you feel differently as to where you would be for on that opposite side, being a, I guess, quote unquote, able-bodied person?
Yeah, I mean, good question, actually. I mean, I don't necessarily feel differently because I've always had a moral centre different to my whanaunga on the right side of politics, as an example. Do I see things differently? Absolutely. I see things that I have never seen before that now inform me further about where I'm going and what I need to consider. And nothing like the example of, does the health system support you post something going on? No. Right through to the example of suicide prevention and the whānau that are left behind that may have a physical or even intellectual disability as a result of a suicide attempt. So I don't think I've changed as a person in terms of a moral centre. I just see things through a different lens now. And I think that's a good thing. I don't advocate, obviously, all New Zealanders experience what I or we have experienced. But certainly it doesn't do any harm for people to start seeing things through a different lens.
When it comes to this budget that's coming up, what would you like to see in there? Is there anything in particular that you think this government should be focusing on?
Yeah, two things. I'd like to see individuals have more control over the money that is meant to be available for them. I would rather see a system, and therefore within the budget and that fair allocation of spending, for less of those who take advantage of it, so an industry, where whānau and those who care and support them have more control over that spend. I think that's really, really important. It's a model that's in other countries. I hate to call it a vouchering system. The second thing I would like to see is more joining up between agencies, and I know that is one of the aspirations of the Ministry for Disabled Peoples. But it would be great if specific resources were funded within government to better coordinate those activities. And the third thing I would love to see is more investment in preventative campaigns, particularly for those that, and I don't mean the ACC model, because quite frankly, I've got a very low opinion of ACC. But I would like to see more preventative campaigns run through a lived experience lens. And so I would have liked to have seen more investment in that aspect of things. My overarching hope, though, Paul, and this might be a controversial thing to say, I don't know, quite frankly, I don't care. I would rather have seen let's just say more focus on building up the Ministry for Disabled Peoples, as opposed to, okay, we've done that now, we've got something for all this stuff to go to, and it's now no longer my responsibility as the Ministry of Education or Ministry of Social Development or te me. By the way, te me is a Māori word for, or not the Māori word, but my way of saying in Māori, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
I love it. I love that term.
yeah, it's a good one. It's I'm a tragic for the king and I in Yol Brynner.
A classic, absolute classic.
Yeah. That's how sad my life has become.
I don't know. Musical theatre adds something to a lot of people's lives.
It's taken away from mine.
I say, like Todd Stevenson, he loves musical theatre.
My best, actually my favourite movie apart from sci-fi, because I'm a sci-fi tragic, is
I can't comment.
Is The Producers, which and the only reason, with Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick in it, and the only reason it is because they take the piss out of Hitler, and I quite love that.
Going back to this government, this is the regular question that I've been asking our guest and will be throughout the week. So I've been watching a lot of the reactions that Mr. Luxon has been getting on the road, particularly because there have been a lot of local sports awards happening in the country recently. Been watching a lot of those. And I find it really interesting that when he comes up on stage, because he's always the first one to come up on stage, being the Prime Minister, he gets a very cold reception. But as soon as he mentions the opposition or the Green Party, they get a loud ovation. So that's not pretty. So, what's your opinion? So, because I think that's not very good, looking at it from both angles for a Prime Minister that's only 6 months into government, or less than that.
Great question. I mean, look, politics is a brutal business. And, you go into these things, I would suggest, where you somehow magically believe that everyone loves you. Well, that's just not the truth. I mean, 50% of people might love you, 50% of people might hate you. Your goal is not to get 100% of people 100% of the time. It might just be 51%. And so I think Christopher Luxon has probably, because he's not been in politics for a long time, he probably still thinks that everyone still has the opportunity of loving him. It's just not the case. And also, I mean, that's why we have opposition parties in the country. What is astounding, though, Blake, is just the significantly less length of time it's taken for people to dislike the government. I mean, you've got Māori on the one hand who are saying, well, actually, we're not the ones causing division. It's you fellas. I mean, we're not coming up with all these stupid whiz-bang, bits of fantasy legislation from the Never Never. You guys are. We're not saying have a referendum on Te Tiriti or Waitangi. You guys are. What we're saying is let's build up our culture and build up New Zealand's profile. And just on that, just quickly, I mean, the example I would give is that when you go overseas, and I've been overseas quite a bit, the rest of the world sees us as a culturally dynamic and diverse, rich tapestry of different cultures with a Māori culture that most places don't even have. They love it. They celebrate us. Te Māori, as an exhibition all those years ago, travelled the world and showcased our culture. We're an inspiration to other Indigenous peoples in the resurgence of their own individual languages that have been extinct. And yet here at home, we're kind of like treated like, with a kicking ball for politics. So I think they've got Māori doing that. They've got whānau from the disabled community doing that too, with the recent experience of the former minister now. I can't. I mean, the number of groups coming out in relation to this nonsense about fast track legislation is another example. And if they had learnt any sort of lesson from the previous government, it would have been this. It would have been to slow things down because you might be doing too much too quickly. And you know what? New Zealanders don't like that. New Zealanders are pretty coastline whānau. We like to be taken along the journey with you. We don't like to be thrown off the waka or kicked off the bus. And so, yeah, I mean, I just think they underestimated the the love
Mm.
Love is a very fickle thing. One day, one day you're in love, the next day you're out of love. The third day you're throwing the remote control at the TV. The fourth day you're running down the street like I have done, chasing the dog. And mind you, rather chase the dog than wag it.
Yeah. I just find it rather astonishing, and we've been getting we have been getting and will get different answers that, like, he has to awkwardly stand there while his opposition is cheered for. Like, for example, at the other night at the Hutt Valley Awards, he said, "Oh yay, yeah, clap for him too."
Yeah. was a boy. As a boy from the Hutt, I thought, oh well. But yeah, you just got to roll with it. I mean, look, here's the thing with politicians, and also chief executives of large organisations should have the same thing: a thick hide and a thick skin. Otherwise, you're probably in the wrong game. You should have probably become a kindergarten teacher.
They at least get to play with Play-Doh.
Well, yeah, at least those kids get to play with Play-Doh and and have a nap in the afternoon. Nothing wrong with having a nap in the afternoon.
I'm totally down for that. Actually, I'm all for afternoon naps. I think they're brilliant.
I've discovered through having this illness and this disability and stuff that I never had to be Spanish to have a siesta. Damn it all. For years, I've been telling people rather than Māori, because a lot of people around the world may consider you as looking more like a Spanish or Portuguese or Colombian than Māori. So whenever I was due in for a meeting, I'd just pull the Spanish card and say I'm having a siesta.
One more from me before I hand back to Paul. So before we were coming on, we were talking about the first home buyers and some of the also body language from the other ministers. And one thing I noticed about Mr. Bishop's announcement the other day, as I was saying to Paul, is he didn't look very comfortable making it. And I watched it back a few times, and I wonder if this is something where if they were in government alone they would have done. I wonder if this is another Seymour influenced policy, because you could tell by Mr. Bishop's body language that he was not comfortable making the announcement.
Yeah, I think he wouldn't be the first minister. Other ministers have probably stood at that same podium sort of thing and had to grimace when they're announcing something. Maybe the only person is Simeon Brown, but I'd argue Simeon's probably in the wrong party. Yeah, look, the first home buyers grant and what's going on in housing, I think the disappointing thing is there is a significant, and this comes to the fact that I see things differently now. A significant number of people will never be able to save for their own home or be engaged in home ownership, and that is our disabled whānau. And so, taking away the first home buyers grant just means that more people are in the country, particularly the most vulnerable and those with a low propensity to be able to afford to get into some form of home ownership, have lost out. And I think that's a bad thing. Look, I don't think Chris Bishop is necessarily a bad fella. To be honest, I think there are people I was watching an interview with Erica Stanford on education, and wow, I mean, the level of detail she went into was quite impressive. Hell, I don't want to sound like a right-wing voter now, but in all reality, I think they're stuck in this coalition. They're stuck in the middle of two very interesting characters, Winston Peters and David Seymour. And that song comes to mind from, I think it might be The Usual Suspects, Stuck in the Middle of You. Fools to the left of me, clowns to the right, or whatever it is, I can't remember. But maybe that pain will go away when they also realise that Winston Peters has no interest in being a subservient to David Seymour as Deputy Prime Minister. I can't see the coalition lasting, and therefore people like Chris and Erica Stanford and others who are doing really well, including Trade Minister from the Rotorua, Todd McClay and Andrew Bailey, they're doing really well. Might be, let's just say, their pain might be alleviated.
So that raises a really interesting question then, because we obviously have this coalition in place. Who is this budget made for?
Well, this is it used to be the budget was made for the national base, where National would convince you that they're better at managing the economy than Labor. All you have to do is have a look at the experience in recent years of Australia, where the Liberal National Coalition ran the same narrative, and look what happened to them. They missed the teal movement emerging. They missed the rise of more women in Parliament. They missed everything. Because actually the world had moved on. I think where everyone's got it wrong is that somehow we believe that the left is good at spending the money and the right is better at saving the money or managing the money. Actually, the truth lies somewhere in between, and people just don't care anymore. Um, if National were running the narrative around outcomes specifically and what saving money will lead to, then I get it. But it just doesn't seem that they've got that fixed. And I don't think this narrative over social investment is going to help either, because people see social investment for what it is. Well, social investment for who? Because it's not for us. It's not for anybody else other than you other fellas out there. And so I just think National have missed the opportunity. And slowly but surely, as happened with the National Coalition government in Australia, the opposition and smaller parties begin to nip at your heels and take your vote as well. I mean, One Nation was the example in New South Wales and Queensland, God forbid, and the Teal independent movement was the same. It doesn't mean to say that the Teal independents are any less conservative. They are. They're very conservative, but yeah, I think instead of believing that somehow you're better at managing the books, you're best to find a new narrative.
We saw you on BHN the other night. That's how we ended up getting in contact. So you were on there talking about the Kaianga aura and how Mr. Luxon liked to refer to it as KO or what terminology. So how do you find it hypocritical that they want to keep the Kaianga aura name because it's culturally appropriate, but then ministers like Louis Uston and the former, going back to disability minister Louis Penny Simmons are so adamant that they want them to have a new name.
Yeah, I think Penny's in the wrong party as well, to be honest. I think she probably. I mean, look, you've got some politicians that fundamentally believe it, the fundamentalists of the co-opera or the issue, and you've got others that have to parrot it because that's in the coalition agreement. And so you'll see many of these politicians preface their comments or outline their comments with the narrative that it's in the coalition agreement, which is the immediate indicator that they just fundamentally don't believe in it. But yeah, I mean, this again, the sad narrative here is not about the naming or not; it's about the story behind the name. How did we get to that name? Why does that name exist? Because in Te Ao Māori, we have this thing called the whakatauki, which in English could translate into a proverb, but essentially it's a story. And the story paints a picture rather of why this has occurred. And when you tell that story, it doesn't take away, it enriches. And that's the beauty about having a culturally diverse community. So yeah, I just think they're all just playing a little political game here. And to be honest, is this the overriding issue of the day? No, it's not. I mean, for me, the overarching issue of the day for the BHN podcast was simply, well, can we stop talking crap about state housing versus social housing versus community housing? Social and community housing is built by others, and you can call them not-for-profits or social enterprises, but essentially they're organisations with a balance sheet and they're businesses to a great effect. With a state house, we own it. The taxpayer owns it. Any rent collected on that state house goes back into the state. Whereas with the other lot, we as taxpayers pay for them to be built. We're still paying rent in them for the most part, and that rent goes to private organisations. And to be frank, I'm just fundamentally against all that. Yeah, it turns out I'm against quite a few things these days.
Is that age and wisdom coming together?
No, that's being a half-wit.
I know that feeling really well.
Oh yeah, well now that I've had brain surgery and God knows what, I don't know. Look, here's the thing: it's not. I don't think it's age and wisdom. It's probably more a case of heard it all before. That might be age. I heard it all before, And this is the narrative that politicians don't understand. New Zealanders are no longer interested in the one-liners. We want to see you build something, to do something, because we want you to enable us to be something.
In terms of those narratives that we hear from the government at the moment, we've seen a few over the last couple of months in terms of pre-budget announcements. We're being tough on crime, we're helping education, those kind of things. What have been your thoughts on those pre-budget announcements so far?
Yeah, more interestingly enough, there's not that many of them. Or alternatively, I wonder whether or not some of them have been made because somebody else was leaking them. Which is the other point. I mean, it's so early in this current government, in a government of any description, for so many leaks to be occurring. It tells me that they still haven't got a handle on themselves. But yeah, I mean, the pre-budget announcements, there aren't that many. They do naturally come back to what they've been talking about in some way or another. Or alternatively, like the defence announcement with Judith Collins, it's probably more a case of saying something, but actually not saying something about the three other things that need to be said about in that portfolio. Like, for example, the state of housing for serving personnel, or alternatively, the investments that aren't there in terms of veterans' mental health or veteran services and so on and so forth. So I think it's all a bit cheeky.
I do appreciate that Minister Collins seems to be passionate about the defence area. Like, she's always seemed to have had a heart for the the veterans and the elderly community. So I think she'd like the right minister for that role. I don't know if you.
Oh hell yeah! I mean, give Judith a Glock and stick her in a tank, and she's out there.
She's happy.
I mean, she'd be serving on the front lines of Ukraine if she had her way.
Can we give her that option?
Send her to New Caledonia. It was sad that Winston was there. She would have gone in all guns blazing on the C-130.
Should we be concerned that our minister in charge of the military is also the minister in charge of space? Are we looking at space lasers? Is there going to be like a Star Wars program unrolled? Is that the big surprise?
As a consumer of sci-fi, Paul, I'd have you know that I was watching this story very carefully last week, where they were talking about Rocket Lab and its tie-in with the defense establishment in the United States for a project that could shoot satellites down. And I'm thinking, wow, okay, so what does that mean? I mean, we're talking about AUKUS, AUKUS, and all that sort of business of submarines and stuff, but we're not necessarily talking about something that might be wholly more significant, which is shooting satellites down. Well, maybe our flag should be that Kiwi with its laser, with the lasers coming out of his eyes.
Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of a side note here, because I was doing a research piece a little while ago around the trans bathroom announcement that Winston did. That flag was designed by a former ACT Party candidate who transitioned. It was a trans ACT Party candidate who designed the laser Kiwi flag. And she turned around and called David Seymour ignorant about trans issues. Not that he was nasty about it, he just didn't know enough. And I thought that was a really fascinating thing to find out. And the laser Kiwi flag was done by an ACT Party member.
Yeah, the only thing every time that comes to mind, all I can hear in my own head is I probably shouldn't have done that, but I don't care. And it looks like the dog has joined me.
Oh, hello, puppy.
Yes, sir. Hang on. Come here. Say hello.
So cute.
If only this was the Doge dog.
You'd be rich.
Hey, too late, hey. We've missed that boat. We need to find a new scam.
Selling puppy pictures online.
And
puppy porn.
Before we go, Matthew, any final hopes for any other categories in this budget?
Yeah, I mean, two, I think, which is unusual for national. I think their primary focus is going to be on education, so I'd like to see more investment in primary and intermediate education. To be honest, I mean, I think it's one of the biggest underinvested areas out there, and I don't mean for truancy. I mean, we've missed the boat on truancy. We've completely fabricated this truancy crisis, which is apparently not associated with changes to society post COVID. And the second thing I'd love to see is more equity, and hopefully they'll be the ones to do it. More equity for women's pay. I think the pay equity question, even in some government departments, still isn't going fast enough. So it would be great to see more funding available to settle those claims. Other than that, I'm just counting down. There'll be a clock on my wall in the not too distant future. I'll be taking bets on how long the government will last. I'll be running a book. I'll probably lose a lot of money because people will believe, like me, it won't be much longer. I should have run a chook raffle. That's what I should have done. I should have run a chook raffle.
Yep, everyone loves a chook raffle. That would have been perfect. You still got time. I reckon we've got about 12 months left.
Oh,
maybe 11?
I've got some polystyrene around here. I've got some parsley in the garden to decorate it. Frozen chook from Pack and Save shouldn't be any more than $12. $2 a ticket. Oh, what a winner.
Perfect.
Small incremental increases.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. But my bet is the day that they have to do the switchover is the day that Winston gets really grumpy. That's just me.
He's like Lazarus with a triple bypass.
Yeah.
It's like, but this time around they rolled back the stone from the Jesus cave, and it wasn't Jesus in the cave. It was Winston, and it wasn't anybody else rolling the stone back. It was him.
Yeah, yeah. And to get there, he's gone and hooked up with a whole bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists and nut jobs along the way. Like, it's just, yeah.
See, Paul, like, isn't that the thing though? The thing with Winston is you'll always see him not shop around for votes, but he'll go the distance to get the vote.
Yeah.
And people should have seen this coming when he walked out in that crazy crowd of tinfoil hat wearing prima donnas and cone heads out there at the parliamentary protest the other year. As soon as I saw him walk out in the middle of that crowd, I thought to myself, "Yeah, no wonder you bet on the horses, mate. You've taken a bet here, and it paid off.
It did.
Unlike Liz Gunn, Liz decided to step out there, and it hasn't helped her. The Tamakis decided to step out there, didn't help them. But somehow the Teflon Godfather went out there into that crowd, spread his Lazarus Jesus dust around, and here we are.
Yeah, it's. Do you think he will ever retire?
No.
Okay.
No, because he's probably learned the lesson of Muldoon. When Muldoon retired, it was not too long after that he died. And I think this narrative is that Winston would rather be taken out in a wooden box, heralded by either side of politics, standing to attention as the Māori wardens waved him goodbye.
Whoa!
That actually sounds very Winston.
So you're predicting that Mr. Peter dies in office?
Wouldn't surprise me. Nothing surprises me with Winston.
He's pushing 80.
Finally.
Sorry, can I just say, Blake, the reason I think that is people both underestimate the old man, and also they underestimate his drive for legacy. Nobody has fully comprehended or understood, well, actually, Winston, what do you want to leave behind? What is it that you're doing? Or is it just that you're in fear of not being remembered? Because I tell you, he'll be remembered.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Blake, Matthew, thank you very much for joining me. It has been a huge pleasure to sit down and have a chat to both of you. Matthew, where can people find you online if they want to follow you and see what you're up to?
Just go to my Facebook page or Twitter. My handle is @Tukaki Matt. And yeah, come and join me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Don't forget, we've got other specials coming up this week as well. You can find those all on the YouTube pages. There's tons of stuff to deal with. The budget coming out. Brace yourselves, it's going to be a big one. Until next time, catch us later.